Good afternoon. This is part 2 of a conversation that I started earlier. The problem is to locate the possible fault lines that help explain why most African states are in the condition they are in. Is there a leadership deficiency issue, a problem of leadership? Does it explain why Africa is where it is today or not? So what best explains the problem in Africa? Is it the lack of leadership or something else? And if it's leadership, what kind of leadership do we want or do I want? I think it's more appropriate the leadership I want, to the extent that I believe that is a leadership problem. What kind of leadership do I want for myself? Do I want a leader who substitutes the individual citizen, or a leader who knows where to start and where to end? What is this? Is the divide a conquer rule at work? Is it a problem of third parties who divide? What is the problem? So let's take a cue from this book, Power in Action, Democracy, Citizenship, and Social Justice. This is by Stephen Friedman. Power in Action. Is the biggest problem facing democracy leadership? And if so, why? In this exclusive blog for democracy in Africa, Stephen Friedman, one of the continent's most thought-provoking and insightful intellectuals, shares the insights of his important new book, Power in Action. If leadership is African democracy's problem, what made it a problem? Perhaps the most oft repeated explanation of the weaknesses of African democracy is that the continent is saddled with poor leadership. This diagnosis is common among scholars, journalists, and public commentators, both in Western Europe and North America, and even in Africa itself. It is so widespread that it has come to be seen as an expression of common sense. In reality, it is anything but common sense. On reflection, it is more than a little odd that it has become so popular in explanation among people who are usually used to trying to explain the world. The leadership explanation begs a surely obvious question. If African leaders are almost uniformly not good for Africa, for African countries, why is this so? Unless we fall back on bigotry and the false claim that Africans are somehow not endowed with qualities which enable them to run governments, then there must be realities in African societies which produce the type of leadership which people bemoan. But the leadership explanation does not tell us what these are. And Ramnyarazi, you say devise and conquer rule being used at best. What do you mean by this? Perhaps you can share what you mean by this so that I may understand what you are trying to say. So the problem of leadership in Africa, as we discussed earlier, is it a problem? If it is a problem, how does it become a problem? And this is Stephen Friedman, who is sharing his own book, Power in Action, Democracy, Citizenship, and Social Justice. He argues that if we want to understand African democracy's constraints and possibilities, we need to move beyond the leadership explanation and find more plausible reasons why African leaders often seem unwilling or unable to ensure stronger and deeper democracies. One explanation on offer, ironically proposed by scholars on the left who want to argue against what they see as cultural colonialism, is that African culture rejects the values which underpin democracy. The core democratic idea is that members of political communities should govern themselves, that in principle citizens should decide what is best for their societies. If Africans reject this, it must surely be because they prefer not to decide and would rather that leaders decided for them, which is precisely what these scholars argue. But in some cases, even their own evidence points in the opposite direction, showing that their African interviewees value accountable government, free speech, the right to essay in decisions, all of them core democratic values. Other evidence is available to show that Africans value democracy's values at least as much as citizens of very old democracies do. So that's the commentary from the book by Stephen Friedman. So it looks like we are waiting for more people to arrive into the conversation so that we can then be able to dissect and go through the true meaning of this leadership conundrum. If you're watching, please say something and let's be able to interrogate some of these ideas. So any preface, any word? If not, I'll come back with part 2 or part 3 if we start from the earlier broadcast.